riverkeeper for 18 years. I was actually a riverkeeper in North Carolina for 14 years, and I dealt directly with the Dan River spill. I was one of the first responders on the scene on February 4th, 2014. And when 70 miles of the Dan River were contaminated with 39,000 tons of toxic coal ash and 27 million gallons of untreated ash water. And I have to say, there was other riverkeepers working on coal ash at the time, but I wasn't fully aware of what a serious issue this was, because I was just dealing with a lot of other important issues, so I thought. And I actually was the acting riverkeeper, but I was only 30 miles away, so there is no riverkeeper on the Dan River, so we felt very obligated to help respond. We were out there sampling and all that other stuff, but we started finding a lot of problems, and we really started also testing people's drinking wells living next to coal ash ponds. In the end, there was over 330 homes that were basically told, do not drink the water because it's contaminated from coal ash, or issued do not drink advisories from the Public Health Department. We've since, when I came here, tested drinking wells here as well. And I could just tell you a lot of different horror stories about this issue, but I did file a lawsuit against Duke Energy and on the Acton River for the Buck Steam Plant, which is about 5 million cubic yards of ash. And I'm pleased to say that Duke agreed to a settlement agreement to recycle all that ash on site. And when I came here, I was actually really surprised. When I came here, it just seemed like the whole coal ash issue was fairly non-existent other than what JRA was doing. It just seemed like there wasn't much energy or focus on this really, really big issue, which was such a big deal in North Carolina. And it did affect, Virginia waterways. So anyway, that was kind of how I got involved. I was hired as Potomac Riverkeeper in 2015. And within the first couple of weeks, went right down to Possum Point, found all these discharges, illegal discharges, a tow drain, which had been discharging for 30 years, flowing like a creek into Quantico Creek. I just literally couldn't believe that the inspectors of the state, considering what happened in North Carolina, that they were just still operating in the same manner. Keep in mind, Duke Energy and the North Carolina Department of Environmental and Natural Resources were both placed under criminal investigation. I am pleased to say that the Riverkeepers in North Carolina work with Southern Environmental Law Center. I work directly with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Criminal Investigations Division of EPA, and we Duke Energy pled guilty to 9 criminal Clean Water Act violations in the end, and they paid a $100 million fine. But I was, like I said, I was really surprised when I came here, just the response from Virginia DEQ, the lack of awareness. I am pleased to say that I think us and James River Association and some of the groups that we have here, like Sierra Club, have just done a great job of just elevating this issue and kind of demanding better, quite frankly. Virginia DEQ has really been terrible on this issue. It's been very frustrating, and quite frankly, a lot of lawmakers, even Democrats, on this issue. So I've just really was frustrated with the response here, considering that Republican lawmakers in North Carolina said, Duke Energy, you're going to clean up 47 million tons of ash. And here in Virginia, they were saying, well, we got 28 million, but we don't think we need to make them and do anything with it. So we've come a long way. We issued a recycling report last year. We talked about that. But we have some experts here on coal ash recycling. So I don't want to hog this up. Please come on up and tell your story. And now we just want to open this up. But what's that?
I have some very good opening remarks.
Yeah.
Put it in perspective. Dean's been working on coal ash for a really long time and seen all kinds of situations. So we're really lucky to have him here tonight as well.
You all know James River Keeper.
So good evening. My name is Jamie Bronchio. I'm a James River Keeper, and I manage James River Association's advocacy program. Like Dean, we've been working on this issue since about 2015, when it really kind of came to a head. And why is that? Well, if you probably saw some of that in the film, 2015 is when we had the federal rules sort of finally rolling out. We had these horrible spills, the Tennessee Valley Authority spill, we had the Dan River spill. Finally, as a country, we were sort of waking up and saying, we've got to do something different. We've got to figure out a way to store this stuff, this ash that's been building up along rivers all over the country, in a way that's going to be safe for communities over the long term. It's not just here in Virginia, it's in our other neighboring states in the southeast, but also all over the U.S. In 2015, Virginia was required to start looking at this issue. And it started with dewatering. You may remember that. Bremo Power Station was a really big focal area to begin with. And a lot of folks sort of woke up and said, well, now Dominion's going to do what? They're going to discharge all of that water directly into the river over a short period of time. And we got involved. We were ultimately able to sort of reach a settlement agreement with Dominion so that they could install a treatment system at their Bremo Power Station, as well as at Possum Point and Chesapeake and each of the stations where they're going to be decommissioning these ponds. So that's phase one. We've got to get the water out of the pond, and we've got to clean it up as best possible. Step two is closure. It's final closure. It's putting the cap in place, or it's excavating it, or it's recycling it. It's sort of all those options that we've been hearing about tonight in the films. And that's where we are now. And we've got a lot of good reasons to go above and beyond the minimum standard. The minimum standard is cap in place. Dominion is allowed to do that by law under the federal rules. But we know, because of what Dean has found at Possum Point, what we found at Chesterfield Power Station, that's not going to be enough. A few weeks ago, our organization, as well as the Southern Environmental Law Center, we released a report, which was a risk assessment. And this is done in sort of the Superfund methodology, something that EPA sort of sets out to assign risk for people who either drink water or engage in recreation activities in these places that are contaminated. Basically, if you're an industry and you have waste at your site, you have to clean it up to a certain standard to avoid people getting sick. We applied those same metrics to the testing results that we have gotten within Dutch Gap Conservation Area. This is not within the plant itself, this is within the park where people recreate, where they're hiking and potentially fishing and interacting with the water. And in each of those places, you have a higher chance of getting cancer or getting a non-cancer type illness. So this is a report that I brought with me. I'm happy to hand out some more copies if you didn't get one on the way in. But this is just sort of further evidence that it's not just that we have high arsenic, high lead. There are actual human costs to engaging with these areas. And if we don't think about those kinds of costs as we choose a final solution to dispose of this ash, there's just a lot of risk. People who are visiting these sites and recreating, we really need to think about them as well as the bottom line, what it's going to cost to remove this stuff. So, looking back, geez, over the years, we have put a lot of energy into this issue. The Potomac Riverkeeper Network, James River Association, Sierra Club, of course. We've got a lot more organizations like the League of Conservation Voters, the Virginia Conservation Network. A lot of groups sort of coming together this year to really move a campaign effort forward to get legislation over the line. The last 2 years we've been trying to do that. We've been partially successful. 2 years ago, Dominion had planned to submit their permit applications to cap these ponds in place. And they would have sort of moved ahead and capped them, and we would not be having this conversation now. Because of the last 2 years of legislation, we've been able to sort of put that off and require Dominion to study it a little further. Year one, Dominion came up with this assessment report that had astronomical costs of doing all of these things. Last year, we had another bill that required Dominion to do an additional study and actually go out and talk to actual businesses that recycle ash and get bids from those businesses to say, here's what we propose, here's what it's going to cost to actually dispose of this waste in different ways, either recycling it, excavating it, moving it off-site to what we call clean closure. And that's really the only way we can stop the leaking that is happening at Chesterfield Power Station, at Bremo Power Station. That leaking is sort of a slow tick. It's not; these aren't torrents of water coming into the natural area. It's a slow drip. But we have this stuff it's just piled up over the years since the 1930s in the case of Bremo Power Station, 1940s at Chesterfield. And some of you remember there were a few hurricanes that sort of woke us up this fall, and we thought for a while one was going to be heading straight down the middle of Virginia. Unfortunately, it had a pretty devastating impact in some places of North Carolina. That could have been us, and I think we should be thinking ahead, not just to the risk of this slow drip, but if we are faced with a large storm, a major breach in one of these containment systems, because we choose to leave it where it is over the long term, there's even more at play. We have drinking water intakes downstream from Chesterfield Power Station that would get affected. as well as these resources that we all cherish, to go fishing or boating. A lot of kids go to Henricus every year just to interact with that historical site. So I think we are in a pretty good position this year in knowing that we have a lot of good information. We had some of our elected officials, we had Senator Chase's statement here this evening, we had the aide from Senator Dance's office. We have some great folks engaged in the issue, and it's sort of up to us to push them to, again, move that needle forward to get us to that final solution, which is completely possible this year. So I want to talk a little bit more about what that is, but not maybe a little later. I think we can get into the legislative approach after I give our other panelists a chance to talk about his piece, which is more of what is the opportunity of recycling, because that's not the expertise of either Dean or I, but I want to introduce Hank from CEPA Group to talk a little bit more about what he does.
At some point, you know, and while the Trump administration is simultaneously saying we want to weaken the coal ash rules, so that's going to play out in the courts, I think, for a while. But I do think there's an opportunity right here in Virginia to say, you know what, we're not going to wait around for that. We're just going to figure this out this year, and we're going to put forward a bill that's going to prevent cap in place of, you know, what Dominion has been pushing for the last several years, and move forward with some meaningful cleanup opportunities, better corrective action opportunities for dealing with coal ash, whether it's recycling or, and I will say, at least in North Carolina, you know, there's been this originally moving of ash to landfills and recycling now. There's going to be free recycling facilities built in North Carolina. My big issue with ash is that, and why we did a recycling report, was that anytime you talk about relocating ash, you're talking about putting it in somebody else's community, right? And so a dear friend of mine, the Haw River Keeper, she was the recipient of some of the ash in North Carolina, Lee and Chatham County. And, you know, and I'm just glad that lawsuit that I filed against Duke Energy on the Acton River, CEPA Group is there, actually going to be recycling all that ash on site. And that ash, I'm not responsible. The work I did was not responsible for moving that to some other community where they don't want that ash. And that's why I think recycling is a good opportunity for dealing with this problem. But I don't know if that answers your question fully. You might want to add, you might want to add.
One quick thing to answer your question, Glenn. So the 2015 rule was sort of the result of a lot of stakeholders weighing in on those things. So coal ash could have been considered a hazardous waste, or it could be considered household trash, and it's more on that other end of we're going to treat it more like regular waste. And the minimum standard, as I said earlier, was leave it where it is and put a cap over it as a closure technique. And since then, what Glenn is referring to, they've come back and said that's not good enough. That's still sort of playing out. But there's some good news in that while our federal administration is trying to roll those rules back, our state administration is defending those rules. They've gone on the record saying we want to keep those in place. And we're also getting signals now that our administration here in Virginia wants to get a clean closure bill through the General Assembly. But they cannot do it without having communities going out and speaking loudly at a lot of these committee meetings, all these things that are going to be discussed at the General Assembly. So we've got a lot of work to do still.
And a quick point to Glenn's thing, I don't think, tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think they're going to change the beneficial reuse piece of the coal ash bill. I think it has a lot to do with the ponds, the storage of ash, and that sort of thing. Do you agree with that, Jack? Yeah. Okay.
We've got a stack of questions.
Yeah, yeah. Please, can you help
facilitate
questions? Yes, thank you.
If y'all still have questions.
Okay, I do.
5, 6. So, and also leaves in this.
The landfill that they have in the meter can, you know, that's the Duke Energy product that they're in cap. Is that the ideal situation as far as the technology of actually enclosing fly ash, you know, with the liner and then planting grass and whatever over top of it? Is that the best that the industry has?
So that would be an example of a modern landfill that has the modern liner beneath it to prevent that leaching from occurring. But I think what we would argue certainly is that we don't want to landfill all the waste. One, because there's an opportunity to recycle it, as Hank has been talking about, into something that will be reused safely, because certainly landfilling all of this stuff is going to be costly. It's going to take up a lot of space, and also, as Dean has already pointed out, a lot of communities may not want to have these trucks going through their neighborhoods and bringing this ash from one place to another. So I think that it's sort of a combination. Sort of, a landfill is an ideal option in some ways, but we want to also recycle as much of this as we can, so that we don't need to take it to all those landfills.
And that's referred to as clean closure when you hear that term.
But what I'm saying, you know, right here, Dutch Gap, if you use all of the fly ash at Dutch Gap, you could rebuild the bridges in this whole state and not empty those ponds.
For recycling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, so some kind of way you got to find a way to cap. If you're talking about Possum's Point, talking about Greenville, you're talking about Dutch Gap. We have way more waste matter right now than we have the technology to use it all up.
So is that,
What is the market? You're not able to talk about it. There's certain things you can't talk
Yeah, I
about.
got to be real careful. And what you're talking about is the scale. Yeah, 27 million cubic yards. And in the time window that's in the current closure rule is 15 years. So if we do anything recycling, it's going to take us 2.5 years to get a permit and build a recycling plant. So take 3 years off the top right there. Then we have to leave another year at the end to complete the closure. So take 4 years off. So 11 years, 27 million cubic yards. Yes, we can't do all that within 50 miles in 11 years. You're absolutely right about that. That's correct.
But I will say that if you go to our website, Potomac River Keeper Network or Southern Environmental Law Centers, we did a recycling report. We looked at the viability of coal ash recycling in Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina. There are plenty of markets for it. And Jack's got to be careful about what he says and doesn't say. But the bottom line is there is a SEPA facility right across the river on the Maryland side, Morgantown plant, and they're only using about a third. They need a lot more ash to come into that facility. There's a big demand for it. The facility in South Carolina is just booming, and now the 3 facilities are being built in North Carolina. So there is a real need for ash. And one thing, when you look at that report, the one thing that jumped out at me is that the Coal Ash Association has been tracking coal ash and coal production since 1966. And if you look at it, those lines have pretty much gone up, right? In 2014, those lines intersected for the first time. And we don't really have data beyond that, but if you were to look at that, coal is continuing to decline while the need for coal ash is increasing. So to me, when you look at where are we going to get coal ash from, we must get it from these coal ash ponds if we're going to continue to use coal ash, because coal is declining, thank God. That's a great thing, right? So that was one thing that really jumped out of that report of me. That
Well, right now we're talking about our infrastructure for the whole nation. Based on what you were saying, you could not get the plants up fast enough to do a nationwide infrastructure.
look, I'm just trying to deal with Virginia. You know?
No, but what I'm saying is this. If you've got Congress talking about, well, you know, hey, you're talking about the trade-off, and you're talking about the infrastructure, all right. You know, there are more than 100 bridges on 95 between Washington and Richmond, okay? And those bridges were built 1958, okay? That's, you know, a lot of those bridges need to be replaced right now.
let's go ahead and continue with the question.
Yeah, I've got a comment. I've got a comment. I serve the county. And I serve the county in terms of park and recreation. And we're trying to get our citizens to use the waterways down around Dutch Gap and Rikers. Now, with all this stuff that's in the water down there, and this is the first I've heard about, and I've been a part of it for about 6 or 7 years, and and we try to get the more uses out of these facilities. But yet and still, I've never heard anybody ever talk about that. And we're exposing our citizens to all this dangerous materials down there. When can I count on you to come to one of our meetings and give this to the people that's making decisions about this?
Can I answer that
Yeah, if I
question?
could.
That's up to Jamie, if he wants to address it first.
Because Jamie and I, Tom Pacquiao, Peter Martin, we told the county 3 years ago that there was a problem at the Parks and Rec using that water source, and the county ignored us.
I'm just saying, I've been here for 7 years
All the
and I've never
testing,
heard
because
that.
Jamie did testing, Tom did testing, Duke University did testing. We found arsenic, cadmium, nickel, everything out the wazoo. We gave the information to the county, and they ignored us.
I'm just saying, I've been there 7 years and I've never heard that before. And
We
now
gave it
we're
to
trying-
the board
I'm just-
supervisor.
Just listen to me a minute.
Well, they weren't ready for it.
I'm listening to them a minute. I'm saying we're trying to get more usage out of that area down there, and we're exposing our citizens to more of it, but yet and still this information is not coming out. Why should I be trying to get the people to go down there and jump in the water and they're getting hung up in the sludge?
Well, let me say something. Let me say something about that. What's your name, sir?
Harris.
Harris, it'd be great if we could chat afterwards a little bit more
Okay.
about that. But I want to say something to sort of clarify what our report says and what it does not say. It doesn't say that it's unsafe to be anywhere in Dutch Gap. It says that the places where we tested, which there were 6 different places around the public trails, all of them were at the heads of codes. And if you think about what we've been talking about, we have 15 million tons of ash at Chesterfield sitting in unlined ponds. It's leaching into the groundwater, and that's going to naturally come back up to the surface in some places. And where we found it coming up is at the heads of these codes all around Dutch Gap. It's not out in the middle of the lagoon. It's not in places where there's more dilution and things like that happening. But at the same time, we shouldn't be sending people to these places that we know it's high in arsenic. We know if they happen to get a little bit of mud on their hand, if they're touching fish, if they accidentally gulp a little water getting it out of their boat, they're going to have a higher risk of getting ill. So I think that we just released this report 2 weeks ago. We've shared it with the county, and we're starting something tonight. This is the first meeting that we have had of this nature. We're planning on doing a lot more of these, and the message doesn't get through right away. And we know that. We've been trying to do this for 3 years. As Bob said, we've been trying to get this information out there. Now we've got more details than we've ever had before. We know that there is risk at these places. So that's all I can offer at this point. But I need your help. I need everybody else's help in the room to make sure that we get this information to the decision makers and that we use it to make the right decision. And the decision that is not to leave the stuff in place, okay? Because it's leaking, and we know that it's causing problems.
And I tried to emphasize that at the beginning. In 2014, the Dan River spell, it was like all of a sudden this, it was just much greater awareness. As an environmentalist, I wasn't even aware of how dangerous coal ash was until we actually started testing seeps, started testing people's drinking wells, started talking to people who were drinking this stuff over decades and finding brain tumors and cancer clusters and things like Chiari malformation, dangerous birth defects in children, which is no known cause, but believed to be linked to chemical exposure in the fetus. So a lot of this stuff is just coming to light now, but we've been working, and this is why we're doing these community forums, is to try and get people more engaged in this issue and tell lawmakers we want meaningful solutions for dealing with coal ash, because Dominion has put forward a plan that said, originally saying, we're just going to put a cap over this and leave 30 million tons of ash in place where it's going to leak forever into our rivers, threaten people's drinking water, and create potential public health hazards for a long, long time. And we're saying that's not good enough. So we've come a long way in 4 years, but clearly we haven't reached a larger audience.
So we have about 5 questions stacked up, so we're going to go Eileen, so maybe you try and keep it to 1 point, and then we've got Bob.
Now that we've got to the women, we've got it.
And you.
All right. Now, generally speaking, I believe that if state law, and maybe Glenn will know because this is about environmental law, if any state passes laws that are better than federal law for the human condition, I know this is true in labor law, then that takes precedent. Is that true in environmental law, do you know, Glenn? So if we got people in next year, get out and vote, everybody, because what we're doing is futile unless we vote and we change the face of this legislature, because we need new legislation to do what you guys want to do. Otherwise, we are constantly fighting. I'm sitting with people who have been fighting over this for years. Glenn has given his life to it. Tyler has given hers also, and we've given many years in this county. We are up against people who are so entrenched in this county that I am not surprised that you didn't hear anything about what you brought up, and that you brought it up 3 years ago. Because we are just up against people that have such a solid hold on what happens in this county and what happens in this state. So unless we all get out and vote, and we got to keep pressure on the governor, I know, unless we all get out and vote in 2019, we're whistling in the wind.
Yep.
Because they've got to change the legislation. They've got to get on the DEQ. They have to basically gut that department, and Glenn knows that far better than I do. Because maybe some have good intentions, but I think it needs to be completely revamped, because I know it's money. I know it's money. It's Dominion Energy that backs it. I know. So everybody, we have to vote. But getting back to the question, Glenn, if the state of Virginia passes legislation that is better than the federal regulations, would they supersede federal
There were
regulations?
attempts in the legislature to pass laws that said no stricter than federal standards, and that would have locked the state regulations into that, and maybe somebody knows more. We were able to defeat those. So in most instances, Virginia can actually pass rules that are stricter than the federal standard. Correct me if I'm
And
wrong.
the federal coal ash rules allow for that too.
Right. There have been attempts in the state, though, to pass laws that prevented the agencies from adopting regulations that were stricter than federal standards. So I don't think we've been successful with that. Maybe you would like to comment on the experience you had in Prince William County with their Board of Supervisors versus the experience we've had in Chesterfield County, where basically the county supervisors love Dominion power.
Yes.
Could you comment on what's going on in Prince William County?
We've just worked within the community, just like I think what's starting to happen here now, just that, they were the same way. They weren't aware of this issue. This was in their backyard. All of a sudden, Dominion was putting forward a plan. They said, we want to apply to dewater 220 million gallons of contaminated ash water into the Potomac River. And people were like, what is this? We don't even know what this is. So it was a huge, I think, learning curve. We had to move very quickly. We did polls and all sorts of stuff and robocalls to get people to these public hearings. And then we started finding problems, which then got into the media. But I will say, I agree with you, but at the same time, we firmly believe that we can pass legislation this year. And we can't wait for 2020. We may have to. But 3 years ago, our bill died in committee. 2 years ago, we made a bill get out of committee. It put a moratorium and put the brakes on the solid waste permits for all 11 ash ponds in the state. And now we've got another bill that we moved forward on recycling. I feel pretty good. I mean, we're hearing things from the governor's office, but at the same time, what I would say is, don't wait for 2020. Please put pressure on Senator Dance right now. Senator Dance has not been with us on ash firmly. And, and I know Jamie's got to walk this a little bit more delicately than I have, but the good thing is my lawmakers, Senator Sorbell and others, have been really driving this issue. So a lot of the legislation has come out of Northern Virginia, but then Senator Chase, the Republican. So the good thing is this is actually being perceived as a bipartisan initiative, which is good, but at the same time, we know that we're going to have to move more Republicans on this issue. But it's really frustrating when we have Senator Dance, who's a registered nurse, you would think would be clearly in our camp, and I don't know if she is or not. And this is why we're here. I'm sorry, I feel like I'm
I would just thank you. I would just add that we had a representative from Senator Dance here tonight. We've had some meetings with her recently about the risk assessment and about the legislation this year.
And next
In
week
addition
he's
to-
having a town hall.
In
Yeah.
addition
Yeah.
to, in addition to voting next year, I would just add that you all need to call Senator Dance during the session and tell her that this is an important.
Show up at a town hall meeting.
Yeah,
Show her
so
a town hall meeting,
Yeah.
write her a letter, and tell your friends, get more people involved. That's how we're going to persuade her. She needs to hear from constituents, and not just us. I mean, we've been talking to her. She needs to hear from you.
And just to give you an example, this thing next week on December 5th, I really hope you go because there was a request from Sierra Club, there was a request from JRA for Jamie to come present their health assessment to the community to make this a balanced conversation about what's going on with ASH. Liberal Women for Chesterfield County requested that Dance actually include a more balanced discussion on this. And my knowledge is that we haven't heard anything back, but the bottom line is Dominion is going to be controlling that narrative. So this is why us getting out and doing these public forums, we felt the good thing is we just heard tonight that they want to do another public forum that has a more balanced conversation about things like recycling and the health risks of coal ash, and not Dominion controlling the debate, because Dominion will tell you it's safe as dirt, there's not really many issues. I mean, they literally will try to paint this very pretty picture. And it's been absolutely frustrating because for me, when I've been working on this for so long, I want to get to this point of let's just talk about recycling. You know, I was telling him earlier, I've been working in the environmental field for 30 years. When you have an oil spill, everybody loses, right? This is one of the few issues that I've seen in a long time that you actually have meaningful solutions. That we can clean this ash up, we can put people back to work, we can rebuild our infrastructure, and we can eliminate this toxic contamination in our community, and we can do it. And it's being done next state over, the next state over, the next state over. And this idea that we might not even do it here in Virginia is just mind-blowing.
So we'll go to the town hall.
Let's take a couple
Yeah.
more questions, but good point out
Yeah.
about the town. So you, me, and gentleman over here.
First of all, Dean, thank you so much. But I'm sitting here, Bob and I are talking. As someone from Northern Virginia, you speak with blue privilege.
Duh.
Do you know what that means? Up there, you have lots of elected officials who are
Not
on the right
successful,
page.
not successful.
I'm like, we don't have time to argue, but they do. I'll tell you, Scott Serville does, and when you come from there, it's a different thing. So what I want to do, I don't want anyone to take this as a criticism, but we need talking points and we need specific ones. So what you just did by saying we need to reach out to Senator Dance is far more effective in these than saying we need to reach out to our legislature. Tell us who are the ones we need to call, because I guarantee no one's waiting to 2020. This group is out all session on every issue that's important to them. It's amazing. But tell us exactly. You need to reach out to Dance. You need to reach out to Sturtevant. You need to reach out to so-and-so. You need to reach out to... Also, same thing, tell us what things cost. How much was the initial assessment? $12 billion. And then we sent them back and found out they didn't do their job and it was less than half that, right? Tell us that for a talking point so that we can use it. It's effective. And my only question for the RFP, I know you can't tell me exactly, is the current $5.7 billion that came out 2 weeks ago relatively accurate then?
Billion.
Billion.
Oh, billion, okay.
Billion, I'm sorry, that's a billion. Is that, because we know the first one wasn't, is this one relatively accurate based on your proposal? I don't give a hoot what your proposal was, but is it close to accurate?
I would say, knowing how many thousands of man hours went into preparing the proposals, that those aren't actionable, that they could put a piece of paper
Because you fooled me once, shame on, you. Fooled me twice, shame on me. Is it accurate? Sort of.
We approached it as an actionable business deal.
Okay. That being said, I think also talking points are so great. How much did it cost? We know here in Chesterfield, because we have it in our observer, that the latest number of 5.7 billion is Dominion's number. How much did it cost to clean up the Dan River? How much were they ordered to pay? 5.4 billion.
What's that?
We do it 5.4 billion.
Well, the Dan River or the entire state of North Carolina?
What the order in North Carolina I understood was Duke Energy had to pay 5.4 billion. So we either do it before or after the human cost, right? But we need those numbers and those talking points.
But also North Carolina, coal ash cleanup is a $1 billion economy as well.
I get that, and
You know what I
I
mean?
realize that's our goal, but tell us specifics. The county didn't not pay attention. Leslie Haley didn't pay attention. So-and-so didn't pay attention. That's mine, because that's the only one I know. Use the names. The county we don't vote for. we vote for the Board of Supervisors. Leslie Haley didn't listen. And if we start doing it that way, we'll have more people who will know what to do.
And I apologize, I speak with blue privilege now, but I've earned this. I worked with all Republicans in North Carolina for 14 years, so I'm excited.
It's just funny being from here going, man, he speaks with blue privilege people who listen.
But this is why we're doing this. You will be getting information.
But just get more specific, but you
There's
will
lots of
tell us,
Democrats
we'll
in Northern
remember it for
Virginia.
you.
One point I want to make
Talented
for that, a lot of y'all
Yeah,
signed
awesome.
in when we got here, and we appreciate that very much. But I'm going to pass this clipboard around now. This is for folks that think they might be able to attend the town hall next Wednesday. We will send you information and talking points. What a lot of you picked up also that has a map of Virginia on the front is a coalition-made fact sheet that is a good starting point for that. On the back of the page, there's information about where that town hall is. So thank you for raising that point. I'm going to pass this clipboard around, so just kind of keep it certain.
It would look like, Peter, there have to be a violation of the Clean Water Act or a violation of RCRA, the laws either regulate what you can discharge, what you can't, or how you store your waste. There's a lot of issues. I could go on all night about Chesterfield. It's a very old plant. They found sturgeon in the intake in 2015, and they're having to figure that out now. So that's a violation of the Endangered Species Act. If you pull an endangered species into your intake, it's going to kill it in the process. Chesterfield uses about 1 billion gallons of water a day at full capacity, and they're discharging that on the other side of the plant, creating very hot water, which has caused fish kills. And actually, that happened this summer. So I think our job as advocates is to continue to keep an eye on those types of things. Right now, we're seeking a legislative approach that's going to make the law stronger than what the state law currently is and get us to that point of safely disposing of ash. As far as other issues down the line, we're going to continue to keep an eye on things and look for those opportunities. But it's, I don't have a specific thing in mind right now to answer your question, but sure, we're keeping an eye out for those opportunities.
I do think, I'll answer, I think there are opportunities, but you got to keep in mind it's a lot of resources. So when we were first looking at, when I first came here, I was new here. I was trying to give DEQ and some of the lawmakers I was dealing with the benefit of the doubt. We found this toxic dope drain, which actually is the same things that Duke Energy pled guilty for, right? Illegal discharges into waters of the United States without the appropriate permit, that they had engineered specifically to do so, right? Dominion and Duke were both saying that these were stormwater discharges in the end. These were industrial effluent discharges, and they lied. I turned it over to DEQ, and DEQ ended up giving them a permit which shielded us from bringing an enforcement action, right? So that's when I started realizing DEQ is not working for us at all.
It's an article.
And I should have known that, but I was still new here. But I will say, the good thing is Southern Environmental Law Center worked with Sierra Club. They filed a lawsuit on the Chesterfield site. That drug on for quite some time, and it's still, we could go on and on about that, but there's still issues to be resolved with that. It just, the bottom line is it takes lots of resources when you bring a lawsuit like that. In North Carolina, we had a lot of resources because the Dan River was such a high-profile issue. Duke was under criminal investigation. It was like, there was a lot of opportunity. Here, the resources are limited. So bringing a lawsuit, it's a challenge, and it takes a lot of financial resources to do it. I hope that answered your question.
I will also say the library has given us permission to go over a little bit, so we have the room until 8:15 instead of 8. So I apologize if I, trying to get through all the questions, but I just wanted to add that, so we'll take a couple.
Dan's can be a big part of this too. We need you to help continue to contact her about that. What is the legislation going to do? Well, we're talking about recycling as much as possible and then taking the rest of it and putting it in a modern landfill so we don't have to continue with these leaking ponds at these 4 sites, Possum Point, Remo, Chesapeake, and here in Chesterfield. The second thing that I want to stress is that legislators don't want to hear from us. They've already heard from us. They want to hear from communities that are affected by this. Senator Dance is going to have a town hall very soon. There's going to be a town hall in Northern Virginia coming up with Dominion and some local elected officials as well. Some information that we need, our organizations, is what are the groups out there that we're not talking to? We want to go to their meetings. We want to go to their town hall meetings or their neighborhood meetings, and talk to them about these issues and get them engaged. So we need to continue to talk to you about that. If you have ideas for folks that we need to get involved who are not here now, let us know, because again, the only way we're going to get this through the General Assembly this year is by getting citizens like yourself really engaged. Any other points or questions you wanted to toss out at us while you got us up here?
My only point is give Jess a round of applause. She organized it.